place is called Kimberley. I grew up there. Okay, two of us. After school, I joined PW and Sons and did a bit of traveling in the southern parts of Africa. Those of you who don't know who PW and Sons are, it's a company called the Army. Anyway, so after that, I went to Pretoria Technikon, where I studied civil engineering. And during that time, I found out what computers are. And there is such a thing as a computer, so I put myself into the spectrum, did a bit of programming on that. And later on, I found out there's PCs with DOS on it, and I did a bit of GW Basic, DBase, C, etc.
Those were the days.
Those were the days, yes. Anyway, so eventually I ended up here at VOS. I've been here for the last 8.5 years. Did some development here, and lately I've started with the security stuff. So, but that's not the point for tonight. We want to talk about VPNs, right? I'm no expert in VPNs. I'm not a know-it-all. I'm sure there are many of you here that know much more than I do about it. So, if I am not correct in what I'm saying, please correct me. I'm fairly open for that. But I can challenge you if I want to. So, how many of you here tonight don't know anything or very little about VPNs? Yeah, I'm not the only one. Who of you know too much about VPNs? Yes, and who of you don't want to know about it anymore? I don't think there should be anyone. Why did you come? Sorry, I forgot to.
I'm IT for all my sons.
So tonight I would like to just cover a few basics of a VPN. I want to tell you something about VPNs, what we can expect of VPNs, more or less how it works, not too much detail, not too much about setting it up, and no demos either because it failed too many times before. Then I've also imagined some stuff just for the fun of it, you know, just to give you a piece of my mind how I see VPNs in the real life, or in a physical way, sort of. Then we can also talk a bit about how anonymous VPNs really are, and some questions, security questions around that. And then eventually I would like to hear your input about what you think about the China dilemma. Anyone knows here what the China dilemma is about? Yeah, I feel. Okay. So yes, that's what I would like to cover this evening. So the first rule in life as such, not just VPNs, not just security, but maybe mainly security in IT. Don't get caught with anything.
And politics. And politics.
Politics also. So, way back, mid-80s, when I was still young and inexperienced, I worked for the railways, and at that time, I think most companies operated that way, that you had to stand in a queue and share a computer amongst 20 or more people. So you had to go and book a slot for yourself down front to work on this computer. And there was this computer, and I love to work on it, so I put many time slots on it. And this one day, I used to, look, there was no backups, and even if you had to go and list your name on a paper or tell someone that you're now going to work on this computer, they just didn't care what you do there. So I don't think there was any sanity in that, to say that. But anyway, so I had this ritual that before I go and work on this computer, I had my floppy drive with me. That was the only means of backing up whatever data you had. Stick in the floppy drive, typing format, A:, and off you go. Floppy's been formatted. This one day I neglected the A:. And guess what? Voila! No data anymore.
You were successful.
Sorry?
You were very successful.
Yes. So I saw this and I sneaked out of the office quickly. Thought no one would catch me in the process. But guess what? They knew exactly who it was. So, and afterwards, this one guy told me that this other guy had his monthly magazine's address list on there. And that was no more because he didn't make backups. So he didn't speak to me anymore for a year or so. Anyway, that's just an example of why you shouldn't really be caught in something. So even if you use a VPN and trying to destroy someone else's database somewhere out there, just don't get caught, because there may be more severe consequences happening to you than just not being spoken to. So what's the promises? What's the promises that we can, that other people, or that we want to see for ourselves? The advantages that we're going to get out of using a VPN. So in the first place, your data should be encrypted, because you want to have a secure environment. You have to have you want to have a secure link to outside, into the world. Especially if you sit at Wi-Fi spots, public places. Even like here, I guess there are guys here that knows exactly how to steal your data. So you don't want to fall into a trap that your data gets stolen. And that's a protection against data sniffers. Also your emails, your IAMs that you send. You don't want easily access to your stuff. So those are some of the reasons that you should use a VPN. There are more. So Big Brother cannot watch you that easily anymore. They can, but it's not as easy as it will be when you just push it out into the open. Also your ISP, they won't always know what you're busy with. So it won't be that easy for them to see what you're busy with. So they won't be able to throttle you. Say, for instance, you do torrenting or streaming from some sites. They count your data bits. So once you're using a VPN, they won't be able to tell exactly what's going on in there. We'll get to it later on. There is ways and means that they will be able to do that. But I think that's kind of achteraf. If you understand what I'm saying. And then also preventing geotagging. So before Netflix was here in South Africa, I used to watch Netflix libraries in the US. through these smart DNSs and VPNs and stuff like that. And just before they got here, I think, I can't remember when it was, but some Australian media companies started complaining about their users busy watching the US library and they're not getting the money for it. So Netflix decided now they're going to block all of these. So they started with the smart DNSs, blocking all those first, and then they started blocking the VPNs. Because all of these public VPN providers, they all have the IPs in the open. And even if they change it, it's quite easy for someone like Netflix to just pick it up and shut it down. But there are other ways that you can still do that. We'll get there just now. Also, web pages that you that you're not allowed in your own country, you will be able to access if you've got a decent VPN. And there are some countries, I think Brazil is one of them, that doesn't allow VoIP services. So if you have a VPN, you can do that as well. Okay, so now for the fun part of it. My kind of imagination, how I perceive a VPN in the physical realm, almost. So I see this open field with not too tall grass and then bordered both sides by forests. It almost brings back that picture of a war scene where the troops from the one side crosses this field to the other side. And on both ends of the field there's machine guns that can shoot you down. So how would you cross that field? The one thing is, and this is only my imagination, if you've got a black pointy hat and a black hat and a room, you can fly over it. So, but this is another thing. So perhaps I must first set the scene to say, so what's the principle, or what's the most basic principle of guerrilla warfare? Anyone know? To see, but not being seen. That is what you want, right? That is what you want with a VPN as well. You want to see, but you don't want to be seen. So, yeah, the first operation is flying over it. Second operation, you can leopard crawl. You can, if you've got a few friends, there's a few young trees, you can be catapulted over it. You can even dig a tunnel underneath it. And yeah, those are just my wild imagination. The other thing is, yes, you can run wildly across the field as well, but you'll probably be dead before you get much further. Then I've also read about other people's imaginary ideas. They say it's almost like, a VPN is almost like a black limousine with tinted windows driving through a busy street. So you can see there's movement, but you don't know what's inside. So a VPN is actually, I don't know whether any one of you know the old ISDN technology. There must be many of you. That is what a VPN is. It's a dedicated line between two networks. Right? It's private access over a public network. So, what do I expect of? What do you expect of a VPN? So my thoughts are that I want to have secure, reliable access over a public network between two private networks. Is that right? So I want to do my thing over this VPN without anyone knowing what I'm busy with. And I don't want them even to know who it is that's doing whatever they're seeing there. And even if they find me, they shouldn't be able to see what's going on inside there. So I want it secure. I want my data encrypted over it. I want it to be reliable, so it shouldn't be dropping every 5 to 10 minutes for whatever reason. It should be scalable. I don't want to challenge 500 other people if they're on that VPN to knock me down whenever I get one. So those are the things that I would like to see in a VPN. There are two types of VPNs. Remote access VPN, site-to-site VPN. The remote access VPN is the simple way of the work from home thing. Who here is working from home? So, yeah, so if you work from home, that's the one that you'll probably use. There are just two components in that you need. The one is the network access server. It's also called a media controller or a remote access server. And then, of course, the client software on your machine just to do the connection. That's the one. The other one is actually the same thing. It's just got a bit of a different purpose. So if you're working in a branch office and your head office is in Joburg or somewhere else, then they can easily set up a VPN in your location, and you won't probably be even knowing that you're working on a VPN if you're working on a server in the head office. Do we have things like that here? Yeah. Okay. So it's mostly used for an intranet. An intranet is usually your employees that's working from different branches or so, or an extranet that is meant for providers of the company or couriers, whatever that is. So let's look at more or less how it works. So most VPNs work with tunneling. Now, to explain tunneling, it's like you ordering something from Takealot. They put it in a box with no label on, and it's being transported to you. So, but it's a locked box. So it's not just a box like we know it, right? So, and only the sender and you hold the key for it. So whoever wants to inspect what's going on the transport part, they won't see the item inside, they will only see the box. That's what encapsulation really is. So you encapsulate it on the one side, put it in the box, reopen it on the other side, take it out. And all this is happening on the transport layer. So if you want to really poke around on VPNs from a security perspective, you have to focus on the transport layer. And I'm not sure how much you can do on the transport layer, but I think it's mostly man in the middle kind of thing that you can expect. Yeah, maybe I must just tell you this. There was, firstly, some of these, not all of the VPN protocols work with certificates, but like LTTP, OpenVPN, they both work with certificates. So there was this company called TrustWave. It's a CA, certification authority. They have decided to sell their signing rights and package it into a nice package and give it to a customer or some of the customers who can then be man in the middle. And whatever you send, they can open it up, look what's inside, and actually steal your personal data. I believe there's probably many of these guys around lately because they're talking about DPI, deep packet inspection, where some companies actually still doing that. So when you send a mail or send data over the line, they will pick it up in their centers and look what it is. So they can hold you to whatever you are doing. So there's on the transport layer, I've just looked, on the OWASP side, there's a cheat sheet for this transport layer. So if you want to secure whatever you have running on that transport layer, go and look it up. The one rule that was standing out for me that I want to share with you is the don't use anything other than TLS, and don't mix up your security stuff. Not. Am I wrong?
Don't want to use SSL because SSL have way too many security issues.
Yeah.
And I think PSL you are already, I think that ICE is minimum 1.1.
1.2.
Yeah, I think it's now 2.
1.2.
Yeah, use TLS 2. Yeah. Is it 1.2?
1.2.
1.2.
And don't use export quality ciphers, perfect forward secrecy, ephemeral defilement keys and stuff like that. AGC.
Don't use it.
No, use it.
Oh, the defilement, yeah. Okay.
But AES 128 plus, that type of thing.
Yeah.
Is it 2.6 now?
I'm not that literate in ciphering, like, just yet.
And then also, don't roll your own. Use a properly trusted library.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay.
Otherwise, Yuri and Chin Wei will be in the front door and the back door.
Who is that?
Two best friends.
Best friends.
They'll must take a friend. They like all your data.
Okay.
Everything 5 times.
Anyway, so there are more, but the 3 that I would like to focus on is PPT, LTTP, and OpenVPN, because I think as I look through the public VPN providers, that's what they mostly use anyway. PPTP, like I said, they're point-to-point tunneling protocol. LTTP, it's a mix of PPTP and something from Cisco called L2F. And it's usually used with IPsec, and that's using IKE for the certificates. I'm right, right?
Let's first about the phase 1 and phase 2 setup of the network. Phase 1 for the initial setup and the handshake notification, then they go for the unique key pairing, then they go phase 2, but then that's past IKE.
Okay, so you can set up IPsec with other certificates, right?
Yes, you can use certificates, but then you need Cisco's protocol for that. Cisco can do certificates, but normally they use just a shared secret.
Okay, right.
Shared secret beforehand.
Okay.
But you can do X509 on the phase 1.
Okay. But it's 2 parts, as I understand it. I
Yeah,
can't
phase 1, phase 2.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I'm not going really into that detail because I'm not that at that level yet.
Well, put it this way, so the SSL, TLS, and the IPsec you can use certificates for if you want.
Correct. For PPT as well.
PPTP you should not use ever.
Yeah, no, okay, that's what I, yeah, okay, yeah.
So
MChat, come on.
so PPTP works with MSChat, right, which you can easily extract Microsoft passwords from.
just out of interest, it goes the same for if you're using wireless. A lot of people want to use the inner tunnel to do MS Chat V2 authentication to Active Directory.
Yeah.
We can see in the middle.
Okay. Right. Okay. I like OpenVPN. That's what I mostly use anyway. Yes.
I've also been an OpenVPN thingy, and I also deploy it. However, the one that I recently started to use that is very nice is Tinc, T-I-N-C.
Oh, okay.
Because it has mesh ability for you.
What does that mean?
That means that you are not a PPTP, you have either a site-to-site, which you then need to set up. If you have in-sites, you need to have an in-square number of links to connect between them. Or you need to go to a central hub.
Okay.
Whereas with Tinc, you can set it up in such a way that you can have a hub, or you can have spokes, or you can have between them.
Oh, right.
And then actually you can also route between the sites the best possible one as the site connects up.
So you can actually hop between these, but you can, yeah.
So let's say, for instance, say Hendrik and I want to connect to each other, but you're the hub. With Tinc, we can have a connection to the central place to get the connection for the data that's in the middle. But if we wish to talk to one another, we can actually talk directly to one another without going through the hub.
Oh, right.
So in the middle, you save the bandwidth and there's no haircut.
Yeah, okay. But with OpenVPN, you have to go through the hub or the server that you set up. Yeah, okay. Yeah, you see, okay, mostly what I did was just set up a server, you know, and go there. So it wasn't necessary for me to jump all over the show. So, yeah. Okay, but that makes a lot of sense, yeah. Okay, so the pros and cons of VPN protocols. So, like they say, stay away from PPTP. It is compatible with Microsoft Windows by default and easy to set up, but I don't really see that as an advantage because you have the lack of security really, and that's because it's so easy to set up. With LTTP, it's much better. The only really problem with LTTP is when you're using it with IPsec, and I think you have to use it with IPsec if you want not. Can you just use it as plain certificates as well?
So LTTP you can use without IPsec, but then you have no encryption.
Yeah, okay, right.
But
So
then
if you want
allows you to do
encryption,
routing and all that stuff.
yeah, okay, so if you want encryption, you use IPsec and you set it up. The only thing is you cannot use IPsec on a NATed network or a NATed server. You have to work through a NAT traversal on both ends, so your client and your. We can later on talk about networks, not tonight. I think there may be some of you who are quite literate in working with networks. I'm not that far yet. What that means, but that's one of the main cons. The other thing between PPTP and LTTP, even if you don't use PPTP, it is much faster because it's got a lower what do you call it?
Overhead.
Overhead, yeah. So it's not encrypting the data both sides. I like OpenVPN. Is it Tinc or Sync or Tinc?
Tinc, T-I-N-C.
T-I-N-C, Tinc. Okay.
Comes with Tinker in the
Okay, right. So I haven't heard even about that. So because I've just played around with these. But for me, OpenVPN works quite places like DigitalOcean or Linode. Set up a VPN, rather small VPN. Set up an OpenVPN server. the one thing about OpenVPN, it can be a bit more complex than setting up the other two, because with the other two, most of your public VPN providers, you have those two that's already configured, so you just link up to them and off you go. With OpenVPN, there are some public providers that give you OpenVPN, and you also can just link up to them with a bit of configuration. But if you want to roll your own VPN, then I went for the OpenVPN. So this is a bit of a fun part. It's a bit lame, but who knows what this is? Anyone's got an idea?
A box.
A box? No. Let me show you. But this is exactly how I would like my VPN to be. You don't see anything to see, but not being seen, right? That's where I'm at here. So, what must you do? Go for a public provider or do your own thing? So, public VPN providers, there are many to choose from. They're quite easy to set up, and I think most guys that's not technically orientated, they will go for the public VPN providers. We here, it is a bit more complex, but it's much more difficult to trace. So if you want to watch the US library, go for OpenVPN, buy yourself a VM at Linode or DigitalOcean, and do that, link up to that.
Just out of interest, that is the preferred way of doing it, because a lot of security service providers, the guys that are making the firewalls with the cloud-based updates, they're aware of all the VPN cloud providers.
That's right. Yeah.
And what they do is that becomes part of one of their security criteria for allowing you to connect to a service that's protected by the device.
That's right.
Is it on a Tor network? Is it on a VPN network? You know, because a lot of people try and sort of hide their signatures and fingerprints by going through them, which means that you'll be chopped.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's what I also found, you know, because I
Especially
was going through these guys and just blocking everywhere, you know, so you cannot have access anymore. But with this, you can.
Or will Linode, for instance, block BitTorrent, or will they just block?
No. Well, there's one thing that you must really be aware of, and this is never, ever, ever go onto Linode or DigitalOcean and try and download BitTorrent there. They'll catch you within a week. And they'll nail you. I was there.
So if you want to do that, Romania is a good country.
Germany as well.
I might not have done this before, but VPN out to Romania, because Romania is the worst internet DRM laws ever.
And they have gypsies.
Your ISP goes, this is going out over 443 and seems to be encrypted, so whatever, and doesn't really shape you for doing that kind of shit. So
Yeah.
it's one way of doing it.
Yeah.
That used to be the case with MLab. Now, by default, they share no very with destinations.
Thanks to you.
So other news on keeping your ISP.
Mike is having fun with Africa.
Africa is giving me also problems.
Yeah, same here.
I think the best ones thus far I found is Crystal Web.
A lot of people have been recommending Crystal.
Is it really? But yeah, fortunately we're getting fiber soon. Anyway. Yeah, the other thing, what they talked about, think, is with these spokes and things that you can do the hopping. You can do it with OpenVPN as well, but then you have to buy several different VMs. So line it, you know, one in this country, one on that country, and going through Romania.
Full mesh.
Yeah, but that can turn out quite expensive because you'll have to maintain quite a few VMs.
Why say VPN?
And don't believe the public providers if they tell you that they're very fast, because I didn't ever see anyone, even if they claim they're very fast, that they are. Did you? I don't know. Anyone have experience on that?
Well, fast can be pretty relative though.
Yeah, but it's actually halving your bandwidth. You know, if you have if you've got an 8 meg line like I do, through Telkom you barely get 6, and then you half it. You know, so no more streaming.
Just bear it in mind. The problem is you're being schlented by your local service provider, and while they're claiming that you've got fantastic 8 meg service, you probably have at best 512k to 1 meg international.
Okay.
Contention.
Right.
It is a best effort service.
Is the best.
But
Should be worst effort.
Guaranteed.
Guaranteed worst effort.
If
Some
you-
sort of
If you
effort.
consider, say for instance, how many services on AWS, they've got an edge location in South Africa. So if you connect to anything on their services, you're actually going through that edge location where if you're doing a VPN, you're going outside, let's say Estonia this time, and then only whatever edge location after that. So
Are you saying always
like
make
you're
your
obviously going to have a slower speed with a higher ping out that way than using an edge location.
so always make your VPNs on AWS?
AWS or Azure. Little known fact,
Yeah.
Microsoft currently has the third largest fiber network in the world. And they too run Microsoft Edge services, so you can go edge. They're also less than the Azure guy. The AWS guys.
yeah.
So
They're building.
They're
They're still building. Okay, they'll get there.
But also, some of these VPN providers got MTU problems,
Oh yeah.
and then you just get packet loss.
Yeah, that's right. So your latency, because of the resending of it, your latency just goes.
Yeah.
Well, not so. Just bear it in mind as well. It's not that they have MTU issues, because over the internet, the MTU kind of takes care of itself. When you have packet shaping devices in the network that just drop packets to get rate limiting to work,
Yeah, that's
as
true.
opposed to changing window sizes or other intelligent means, then you get retries, and that's where you start getting packet loss.
Okay. So for you guys that don't know what MTU is, it's just a fragmentation thing. So it's a building up of packets
Maximum transport.
via the transport, and then some of the bits get lost, and you get fragmentation errors.
Especially because some of these things use UDP instead of TCP, so there's no sequencing.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, so the questions are: how trustworthy are these providers? You know, can I really trust them with my data? Because now they can keep logs, you know, and some of them write it in their fine print, but some may not, and still they may log you know, all your actions, and then you also bug it kind of. What other problems can we expect? Any wisdom here? Is that
Downtime.
Man in the middle of that.
yeah?
No, well, how trustworthy are that man in the
Yeah,
middle?
well, that's a CA problem as well. You know, breaking up your certificates and looking at them at the ISP or at the providers.
I just had to check up for the guy that mentioned Crystal Web in 2013. I remember there was a compromise. Well, they actually found out about it in 2015, November 2015. But in 2013, the hacker told the Hades actually leaked Crystal Web's database containing passwords and usernames. So maybe not Crystal Web, but that's besides the point.
So Crystal Web was one of the very few providers that responded well to that.
Excuse me?
They were one of the very few providers who responded well to that.
Well, they reset everybody's password.
They admitted defeat built. and said that we screwed up. We just done things dumb, i.e. storing passwords in plain text, and they fixed it.
Yeah, but they found out 2
I
years
still get my
after.
password email me back to me from them.
The only thing that scared me was they found out 2 years after.
Yeah.
It's
But
a
then they
password for
still
the
email
internet.
me my password in
I'm
plain
sure you
text.
use the same one for backup.
So if you do it yourself, so if you set up an open VPN, what's the cons there? So now, if you've got a VM in America, in the US, Big Brother might be watching what you're doing there. And now the question is, the China. Okay, let's get back to that last question just now, because I just want to go over to the China dilemma, and I would like us to have a bit of a discussion here. The problem with China was in September 2015, both PPTP and LTTP with IPsec was blocked. On the Great Firewall, everybody knows what the Great Firewall is.
Yep.
You're getting nowhere with that, not inside out or outside in. So in September 2015, both those were blocked and only OpenVPN was allowed. Anyone having any defamatory content about government gets locked up in jail for 3 years. Internet service providers are inspected annually. So they must show all the logs that's coming through. So if there's any prospective hackers or whoever wants to get through the firewall, they're getting picked up. And then early this year, all unauthorized VPNs were declared illegal. So now they're blocking just everything. So you're sitting in China, you cannot get out. You have to deal with that. So now my question to you is, which is the best? The USA, where Big Brother is watching over your shoulder all the time? Or China, where also Big Brother is watching you and you just canned from the rest of the world?
USA. At least you won't go missing.
You won't get missing. You won't get lost there.
China might be a bit better in a different way. It's a numbers game, so they've got 1 billion people. The US has 400 million. So if you go look up for a Chaos Computer Club talk, there's a bunch of German guys that intentionally fuck with the Great Firewall of China. So they look at how they try and discern how it actually works. So one of the things they did is they started making fake Tor exit nodes, and then they would connect from within China to the nodes, entry and exit nodes. And what the Chinese government has done with the firewall is that the firewall, with deep packet inspection, sort of sees that it's a Tor connection, and then will make an initial connection to the node and detect it, and then eventually put it in a block list. But then they realized the block list was incremental. So they made hundreds of thousands of fake nodes and would eventually create a list so long that the server would take forever every day that it had to redo the IP block lists. And then they realized, but they're doing it batched. So then they just made hundreds of thousands of more. So they keep looking at the actual technology they're using to block things. So for instance, you can't use a public VPN because their configurations stay the same. You have to actually do your own VPN, and the guys from Tor have a thing called obfuscate, where it's either they make the packet size the same or vary it, so that you can't actually, they fill up packet size with garbage so that so that you can't actually detect what kind of VPN it is, because for instance, OpenVPN with machine learning, you can actually track a trend of its traffic, connecting the kind of packets it's sending out to check if the connection's still live. and then eventually you have to obfuscate it to make it look like just normal traffic. So the Chinese are good, but there's a billion people, so you can't stop everyone from doing it. Where the US, 400 million, so you numbers game.
Yeah, so you must actually just throw a DDoS on them and push your data through them.
Well, I mean, they've improved it quite a bit. Initially, it was a Cisco system, and then Huawei went, we can copy this and make it better. And it's interesting because you can actually find some of the plans of systems that Cisco used to market that would probably do that. So it's weird, Cisco built a sort of cloud system where the deep packet inspection would happen on a cluster outside of the actual switches, and then update switch and routing rules based on what the cluster would find in the packets. So it's quite it must be a very expensive system, a lot of electricity to check everything that's going in and out. And what they tend to do is they don't kill the whole connection. They just start dropping parts of the packets so that your connection drops between the 2 points, and then you have to reconnect, and then you never establish that connection again.
Create your own.
They let you through.
Basically like normal telco traffic stuff.
Create your own MTU issues.
It's so frustrating, like fucking, I'll read a book.
or I'll get a flash drive.
TCP over pigeon.
Yeah. So you're saying I'm not losing anything by going to China?
So any other?
You probably gained a good beating as well.
Yeah.
Rubber hose cryptography.
I would say tunneling over SSH.
Tunneling of SSH.
Yeah, you can do port forwarding, that kind of thing over SSH. So if you have a VPS, virtual private server that you've rented, wherever, other country, not in the country that's trying to
Just
block
tunnel
you.
it through SSH.
If you can get to it on whatever port that you want to run your SSH server, which is not necessarily 22
Yeah,
or
that's
443.
one other thing of OpenVPN that I found. You don't have to necessarily go through the port that's the default port. You can configure it in ways that you can use other ports. 50,000 or 40,000 odd port.
And that obviously falls apart when they start blocking SSH, but that starts causing other problems for them.
Yeah.
And then you could tunnel over HTTPS and
Yeah.
do the same kind of thing.
So what's the
So
difference between HTTPS and a VPN? Anyone want to have a wild guess at it?
Give you, HTTPS is more session based.
Yeah, but it's also just between browser and web server, whereas VPN is covering all your traffic that you did from the command line.
Well, there's split tunnel and there's full tunnel.
Sorry, say again.
Does that, like, what's the difference between split tunnel and full tunnel?
I have no idea. Anyone want to comment on that?
Split tunnels when you route certain parts of your traffic, like on IP range,
Yeah.
down that VPN tunnel, and then you say everything else can just go out over not over the tunnel, but over your default route, like for
So it's
example
like-
your internet connection.
It's like the middle between HTTPS and
Well, you often use it, like let's say you're connecting from home to a work office, site, and then your traffic to the machines at work, i.e. the traffic destined for work networks goes over the VPN tunnel. And when you try and browse, I don't know, Facebook or Google or Gmail, that whatever else doesn't go through the company's network. It's not to say that you can't force the VPN to set up a tunnel and send everything down there. You can do that. It's generally not considered a good idea. Just in terms of amount of traffic that you have to push through, which then breaks out into the company's, link, that kind of thing. So privacy and whatever other concerns you want to throw at it.
Right. Any other questions you guys have? Sorry.
Okay, so I see you refer a lot about rolling your own VPN, and that would obviously be the best way to go about, given that the public ones are obviously well known. Now, what kind of costs are you looking at? How much effort is required to get this going?
Well, you can purchase a VM at either Lineout or DigitalOcean for $5 a month, more or less. If you have that VM, you can do an OpenVPN there, and you can.
There's something called Algo. that you can use. That actually it integrates quite well with DigitalOcean and AWS and Azure. You basically, initially you need 2 VMs, like let's say 2 $5 VMs on DigitalOcean, for instance, and then you just run algo on your, let's say, your launching VM. You fill in the parameters, and it literally, you give it your API key that you get from your DigitalOcean interface, and then it'll generate everything. It'll kickstart the VM for you, everything with everything configured on that side. It'll give you a nice printout, everything you need to do on your side. Configure your VPN on your side, and you get the site-to-site VPN and tunnel over through that.
Okay.
It's very straightforward to do. It's called Algo, ALGO.
Okay.
It's quite easy to set up.
But is that just a tool to set up the OpenVPN?
No, it doesn't set up OpenVPN. It sets up its own VPN.
Kind of VPN, okay.
Yeah, but it's all open source software that they just scripted basically. It's like a Vagrant script or
Right. Okay.
stuff like that. Yeah. So it's basically it's quite nice. It's quite.
And it's also working with certificates and everything.
Yeah, it coins everything for you. It generates everything for you. Gives you the stuff. It says you take this. You can actually. I use it like on my phone with OpenSwan. You just give it to certificates. You import the OpenSwan. It goes connects straight through. Everything does everything for you.
Yeah, because it is a bit of a mission creating OpenVPN due to the certificates and stuff, but both DigitalOcean and Lino is quite well documented on that. But yeah.
Apart from what you mentioned, there are also a bunch of like user-made scripts for improving the ease of use for installing.
Easy RSA.
That's the one I used not too long ago.
Yeah, like Micro supports MikroTik and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You can use Easy RSA. It generates everything for you.
So you just go on GitHub, look up an install script for OpenVPNs. But that's the hardest part of it. The other part is just buying your monthly VPS.
Yeah, once it's set up, then it's easy to connect.
Yeah.
The thing is, there's also the OpenVPN appliances that you can download. So there's a site where you can actually go, you download it, executable, you run it, and it builds a whole VPN install for you. You can access it and manage it via web GUI.
Yeah,
and you can actually log into it and it downloads the client pre-configured for you. It's pretty much nothing really to do except run the executable. Right?
Sonic Wall.
Or just use the public provider, so they had a bandwidth here, but still, you could just, depends on your application, just make an account.
Yeah, just do research.
Because
user providers,
someone to the logs, logging is their reputation, so if words gets public that one of them is leaking log information, the business model is gone also. So, and the website Talent Freak publishes this yearly interviews of the providers, and then you can see from the wording whether they're trustworthy or not for your application.
Yeah.
And I have a question regarding the shaping. I've heard about shaping here. I'm also just relocated back to South Africa, and I've noticed the same thing. Domestic traffic is quick. Overseas traffic is somehow blocked in some way. Is somebody keeping track of these things here, or of international peering? So who's shaping what? Hours, protocols?
I guess it's mostly Telkom that's shaping this stuff, isn't it?
It probably depends on your providers, but most of the CCOM and WAC stuff should not be shaped, but it's oversubscription on these things anyway, so companies get preference, so they will shape it.
It's obviously happening.
During the day, you'll notice there's different patterns during the day than at night and over weekends.
Yeah.
But capped, you should tend, if it's 8 years old, capped or any other, capped should not have any shape, should not.
Even with business uncapped lines.
No, uncapped. Stay away from uncapped.
You want capped.
Uncapped, you
Oh,
want
you
to
want
get
the
throttled to
Then
death.
they take the shaping away. Because you paid for 20 gigabytes or 100 gigabytes or whatever, so you're going to be able to pay to use it. Uncapped is like open to abuse, so they try and throttle it and shape it.
Even like MO advertises their premium uncapped, they say is not shaped.
Yeah.
Yeah, many of these guys say it's unshaped, but until you go and read the fine print, then
It's not shaped as much. Maybe the shape cap is like
I don't
it's
know.
higher. That's it.
But
You've heard of the term unmanaged.
Even Afrias,
Unshaped and unmanaged. I'm like,
even Afrias, they now got this free data from I think 6 in the morning until or 12 midnight until 6 in the afternoon. And I'm very skeptic about that because ever since they started doing that, I saw that at times my speed is going down. But I'm not certain whether it's just the oversubscription on the exchange or whether it's actually Africa is throttling the data or the bandwidth.
So it would be useful if there was some kind of database tracking all these activities, because privately and for user setup it's quite frustrating.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think everyone will agree on that. Anyway, that's me.